When it's time to buy or sell a home, a question that's very, very common is, what are closing costs? What's the closing cost definition? And we're going to talk about it right now. Hi, I'm Ann Byer. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams in Chester County, Pennsylvania, west of Philadelphia. If you enjoy what you're seeing, please subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell so you're notified the minute a new one is posted, which I am trying to do every week. And if I did not answer a question you might have, please comment below and let me know, and I'll try to address it the next time. So you're wondering, what are closing costs? What can I expect to pay? Who pays the closing costs? What are closing costs? So it's an important thing to consider when you're buying and selling a home. What are the closing costs? What can you expect to pay? What are the buyer closing costs? What are the seller closing costs? So let's start with the buyer. The first group of costs would be the lender fees. They vary from lender. I would plan for about $1,200. They can call it a variety of things: an origination fee, a doc prep fee. They're going to include in that the appraisal, which oftentimes is paid upfront with a check or credit card. You're also going to need title insurance, which depends on the purchase price. It's covering things that may have happened in the past. You want to make sure that your property is free and clear of title. So only the buyer pays for this. There is an enhanced policy and a basic policy. Happy to discuss both. You'll pay transfer tax. It's customary in Pennsylvania that the buyer pays 1% and the seller pays 1%, but there are some municipalities where that is higher. You can call me, text me, and I'll let you know what those might be. As a buyer, you'll have to pay to record the deed and the mortgage. You should plan on probably $350. You'll need homeowners insurance. You'll probably pay for a full year in advance. The buyer pays for home inspections. Of course, that varies with the property. It varies if you have well, septic, stucco, there's checking the sewer line. But a typical inspection group would be the home inspection, radon, and termite. I'd budget for $700 for those inspections. For stucco, totally depends on the size of the property. For a well, budget $350. That would be both quality and making sure that there's sufficient flow. And for septic, plan for $800. If you do not put down 20% on a mortgage, you'll be required to escrow money. The lender will be paying for your taxes and insurance from this escrow account throughout the balance of the loan, but they need to fill the bucket when you get started. So at settlement, you'll give the title company that little pile of money. It depends on when you settle compared with when taxes are due. In a separate bucket, you're going to need to reimburse the seller for taxes for that portion of time when you're living in the house and they've already paid them. Again, that varies with the time of year and when they paid taxes. But if you lump both the escrow and the reimbursement for taxes into one bucket, plan for a year's worth of taxes and insurance between the two. If you're moving into an HOA, oftentimes there is what we call a capitalization fee. That's a one-time fee that the HOA requires you to pay. This varies quite a bit, so you really need to examine the disclosures to know what that might be. You may get a credit at settlement for a seller assist if you've negotiated that as part of your deal. That means you need less money to bring to settlement. And if you choose to lump your mortgage insurance into the loan with a lump sum at the beginning, then that would increase the amount of cash that you might need. That's a case by case you really need to discuss with your lender. In addition to these closing costs, and we call them specifically closing costs, you will need a down payment. Now that's a little different. That's a function of the mortgage that you pick. 3% would be the minimum for a conventional mortgage. 3.5% minimum for an FHA mortgage. A VA mortgage needs 0 down. What are the closing costs for a VA loan? They're a little bit different because there is a funding fee that you need to pay. Again, that's a conversation with a lender to have a full understanding of what that might be. What about closing costs for a cash buyer? Well, all of the lender fees, of course, go away. Title insurance, I still recommend that you include. An appraisal is certainly up to you. Some people opt to do an appraisal, some people do not. It's really your level of comfort with the purchase price and your willingness to pay what could be over the market value. And in competitive bids right now, that's happening all the time. But in a different market, you would certainly opt for that. So what are sellers' closing costs, average closing costs? Well, a seller also pays 1% transfer fee, could vary with location, could be more. They're going to pay the commission for both the listing agent and the selling agent. They're going to pay for certifications for their tax bill and perhaps their sewer if it's not on site. They may pay for the deed preparation and for tracking the payoff of their mortgage. They will pay to overnight that payoff for their mortgage. They may pay a wire fee to have their proceeds wired to them if they do not attend settlement. If the township or borough or city has a use and occupancy permit, they will pay for that. If there is a homeowners association, we call it a resale package, but it's all of the homeowners association documents, including a specific page about payments. The seller pays the HOA, and that varies from HOA to HOA. They'll pay the notary a small amount, and if there is a seller assist in the negotiation, they'll pay that. And they will be reimbursed for taxes that they already paid, that we talked about earlier on the buyer side. So that should help you to understand what to expect for average closing costs and what you might anticipate paying in order to get to settlement.